It's that time of year where the new FC has just dropped, but the question is, are we actually going to buy it this year? You know, everyone always says they're not going to buy it this year, it's the same game as last year, and yet they still end up doing it, not because they want to buy the game, or because they think it is actually better, but because it is the only good online football game. Now, I know we've had games like PES or now eFootball that's been competing in the past, but, you know, from lack of updates or community, it's just not as good as FC. But today, I think I found the perfect alternative. And you've read the title, I'm not going to build it up. It is UFL. Now, it got some mixed reviews when it first launched about 10 months ago. So it's not explicitly Ronaldo's game, but he's very heavily involved with it. He's their lead ambassador. And since UFL have just dropped their new season, they've dropped some really good updates, in my opinion. It's time to put it to the ultimate test and see if it can even compete with FC26. So as a little disclaimer, I've only played 3 hours of UFL and I've played FC26 but on a friend's account. I haven't actually bought the game myself. So my experience with both games is very limited, but I can give you my honest opinion from what I think of both games. Now, you can't really compare the entirety of the games together because FC26, of course, has the ability to play kickoff online. You know, most of those offline things. Now, while UFL does have like the ability to play I'm pretty sure you can play it locally with just a friend and you can play against AI. It doesn't really have that manager career mode tournament, all those sorts of setups that FC does. However, within 10 months, I think UFL has definitely made a name for itself and massively been upgraded since what it was at launch. At launch, it was a pretty good game, but it was clearly very buggy and it lost 3 million players the CEO claim they have pretty quickly. But now with the launch of the new season, you know, when games say they're constantly making updates, but they're very minor updates, if they even are that. UFL, you can tell they're listening to their players. It takes them a while, but they've made some really, really nice updates, and it's made the game properly good, properly interesting to play with. On launch, it was a little janky, not very responsive, but now it's noticeably more. Now, when I played FC26, their passing is just absolutely beautiful. That's like the only praise I have right now for the updated FC26. Of course, I will be buying the game a bit later and giving you my full review on that. But I do want to highlight some things I think UFL does really, really well. Number one, the commentary system. At some points, it does cut out a little bit, or it repeats the same phrase a little more than even FC does. But I think it also adds in an amazing element of, like, they randomly go off on little tangents if the game is boring, giving you a little bit of history. Like, for example, we were passing a lot, and it was the commentators, they're not afraid to make a little fun of you. That's what I really like about the game as well. They're like, oh, they're all playing like pussycats now. And then they went off their tangent on, oh, pussycats, let's talk about the craziest pitch invaders. It was something like, in the 1970s, an elephant invaded the Premier League pitch, and that's the biggest animal in football history. You know, it's things like that that really bring it to life, because they do that in real life. But in FC, they're mainly focused on talking about what's relevant to the game right now and what's happening with every single move. But in UFL, they're not afraid to sort of cut away from the game for a second to give you that little bit of, like, it sounds more like real life, if you know what I'm saying. Like, commentators will, if the game's getting a little boring, give you a little bit of background history, and then it will actually cut out of that background history if something exciting starts to happen. So I think that's really, really well done. Also, the commentators, like I said earlier, not afraid to take a little bit of the mick, you know, especially if you're passing too much. I think UFL really wants to make a point of having like that fast competitive gameplay. They don't like directly scrutinize you for playing tiki-taka, but the commentators definitely do a little bit. They poke fun at how much you're passing and like possession is not scoring goals. So yeah, I think the commentary system is really good. Of course, they can never overtake the OG Derek Ray, but it's getting close. You know, it's very interesting to listen to. And another thing I think the game does really well is the little cutscenes, like I said earlier. You know, they all look pretty nice and polished. There's no player view or hypermotion replays, but, you know, they definitely work, and I think they look really nice. Another thing that looks really nice is the actual crowd itself. They're not really pixelated. They don't all move in the same animation when people score like it did do in earlier FIFA games. You know, they each have their own little things. Some of them wave flags, some of them wave banners. And I think that's really advanced things for UFL, especially because it was only released 10 months ago. I think already it's got that really impressive look to it. And now how the players look in the game, since I'm so used to how they look in FC, you know, some of them do look a little strange, but, you know, they definitely have had effort put into them, especially the high-profile players like Ronaldo, who's the ambassador, or the new ambassadors. I think it's Valverde and Rafinha. But yeah, you know, the characters, they look good. They're made in Unreal Engine, so of course everything there looks good right now. They've had the insane graphics overhaul, and it definitely looks good on a new gen console. So I'd say it can pretty much compete with FC26 for graphics. It's not quite on that level. It looks better than eFootball, but just below FC. So yeah, we'll put it at like B tier graphics level. The whole UI and interface is really easy to navigate. It's really nice. They've changed the background actually from the 3 stagnant best players from your club to like some cool cinematic cutscenes. I think that's a little detail, but it elevates the game a lot. And then finally, my last big praise for the game is that it doesn't keep track of player stats like FC25 does, and I do like seeing how many appearances each player's made, how many goals they've got. But I think UFL realised, you know, they should do something a little unique. So instead of doing that, they've track your match stats for the season. And then the commentators, again, my main praise for UFL is its commentators. They will like comment on the winning streak or the probability of you winning given your recent form versus your opponent's recent form. And I know FC taps into that a little bit, but it's mainly for the promotion matches and saying, you know, it doesn't actually analyse the teams and see who's in that slightly higher division, because in UFL it's got a slightly different ranking system. So there's like bronze, silver, gold, but within that there's about 10 subdivisions, each with its own little progression to it. So there's a lot of tiers to climb up on. And if you're playing someone in a higher tier, which you sometimes will, to maximise that real speed of, you know, getting into an actual match, which I also think, sorry, a little tangent here myself, I also think the speed of connecting to someone is way faster than it was when the game originally launched. I think they've changed it, so like within bronze you can play people within one or two arenas of yourself, so it's pretty even skill and it will make loading times faster, so it's a win-win for everyone. But yeah, I really like how they keep track of that. They'll tell you your form, your opponent's form, like can they keep their winning streak or can they beat their losing streak. You get to look at your opponents before the match, like won a certain amount, drawn a certain amount, lost a certain amount. So I think that is a really nice touch. It gives it some nice individuality against FC26, because I don't think they do that, but FC do, of course, do the player stats with this, which this game doesn't. But we did say this game doesn't do a lot of things FC does. I want to tap into that a little bit more now. So I think on launch, there were quite a few issues. You know, the stadiums didn't look quite realistic enough. They do now. They fixed that. Also, it wasn't quite responsive enough to have a very, very enjoyable experience. They've definitely fixed that now. And while there are still certain bugs, and you can see, you know, it's a slightly more budget game than FC26, despite them pledging to, I think they wanted to fund, 40 million over the next few years to help develop it. Yeah, it is clearly, there are parts of it, like when the commentators go quiet or when the movement's weird, it's just not the same. And the gameplay itself is pretty good. Like I said, it plays a lot like an older FIFA, which is, I guess it depends on your preferences. I quite like it, but I think tackling's a lot harder. Dribbling's not as fluid as it is in FC25 and 26, especially in 26. They have really fluid dribbling there. They have really good skills. And there are a few skill moves, but it's not quite the wide range of FC. And now you might argue, since this is a new game, they might implement them slowly or give players a chance to learn them, which I do think is a really good idea. That's what, in the very long run, FIFA did. It started with like 10 skill moves and added a few more each game. So yeah, it's once you compare it to the older FIFAs, because it is trying to be like the starting version of itself, you can see it's doing really well right now. But if you compare it to FC26, it's still got a long way to go, because there are features they have to add, things they have to address. But of course, they need the time, the resources, and the player feedback to do that. And so all in all, I would 100% recommend you at least try it. I've had loads of fun playing it. I'm definitely going to keep playing it until I find a big issue. And if I do find one, I will let you know. But yeah, I think it's a great game, especially because it's free and it's only about 30 gigabytes. It's definitely worth downloading versus like the 70 quid you have to pay for FIFA and then 100 gigabytes you have to give up to install it. So it's definitely worth a try. And if you do try it, please let me know what you think down in the comments if you think I'm completely wrong. I don't think it's on FC level yet, but I think within the next few years, if it does keep up the updates, keeps listening to its community, it could very easily be on par with FC by about FC30. Now that sounds far away, but trust me, it will be a lot closer than you think. Alright, sorry, I started rambling a bit there. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day. See you in the next video.